What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about just how well Dragon Ball Sparking Zero could do. And I'm specifically talking about sales in this video. Now, look, at the end of the day, I want the game to do as well as the developers and the publishers want. I want the game to spin off to, even greater heights. I want the game to be good, right? Those are some things as the consumer that I want. I think it's a bigger deal depending on who you ask, but I think this game has a real solid chance of being legendary. Not just legendary from the game itself. I actually think that's almost a lock at this point, but also in terms of the magnitude of sales. I think when I think of Dragon Ball games, I go back to Budokai and then Tenkaichi. And the Budokai series actually went down in terms of sales. The first one sold the best and then went down from there. Tenkaichi, I think, actually went up. 1, 2, then 3. They each did better than the last. And I think Tenkaichi 3 almost cracked 4 million, which was the highest of any of those 6 games at the time. And, Raging Blast and Legacy of Goku, none of them actually reached that height. It was only until you got to the Xenoverses and the Fighter Z's of the world that you started to reach a whole different stratosphere, right? That's when the game started to get 5, 10 million units, and that's really where we've been at for a while. The last couple of Dragon Ball games have reached that 10 million mark. The highest sold anime game of all time is actually Ultimate Ninja Storm 4, I believe, at 12 million, right? And then you got 2 Dragon Ball, I think Xenoverse and Fighter Z, that are both at 10 million, okay? So the question is, can Sparking Zero actually beat that? And honestly, I think the odds are pretty darn good. It's a different game than the Xenoverses and the Fighter Z's of the world. I think you just look to all the trailers, all the presentations, everything they've ever done for Sparking Zero, and the fact that it even just exists, right? They announce it, it's the spiritual successor, Tenkaichi type thing, and people have lost their minds in the best way possible, right? I've just never seen so much excitement. And again, I got to be honest, I didn't follow when Ultimate Ninja Storm 4 came out. So I don't even really know why, if we're being honest, how that game, reached the heights that it reached. But I do know and can kind of sense the excitement and the anticipation for this game. So 12 million is what you're looking at for it to be the highest selling anime game of all time, right? The thing is, you look at these top games and they're not new. And when I say not new, they've had years to grow that player base. So the thing with Sparking Zero that's going to be interesting is where it starts and how the pattern kind of continues down the line. This is a game that you would expect, and it's already been pretty much confirmed, right? There's going to be characters added over time. It's got room to grow, but I would struggle to say compared to some other Dragon Ball games, it doesn't have the ceiling of expansion. And that's not to say that's worse. In fact, I actually prefer a game more like Sparking Zero versus others. I want a game that, is what it is. And there'll be some reasons to come back over time, but largely it is what it is at launch, and that's why you're getting it. I prefer those, right? But, if you're looking for long-term sales, you're going to need things to bring people to buy the game long-term. Another thing also is where it comes out in the console generation. So you're about 4 years in now. You think to some of these other games, again, they've had time. So they've had generation jumps. They've had years where that generation was already alive. This generation, although I do think it's lacking in terms of original content, I do think it's strong in terms of the console sales, right? In terms of sales just in general. And a thing, I mentioned in the beginning of this video that I do think is important. You think to how these Dragon Ball games have evolved over time. They keep getting bigger. It's not like they're getting smaller. Now, again, Budokai actually got smaller, and, the 5,000 spin-off games and games on the Game Boy and all of these different stuff, right? Some of them didn't reach the heights of others, but largely, if you look at the pattern, they did continue to grow. You know what I mean? Budokai 1, 2, 3, yeah, it dropped, but then Tenkaichi kind of picked up where it left off and then started to build again. Then you had 1,000 spin-offs, right? And then you started to get into the Xenoverse era, and that actually, it jumped up considerably. And again, now you're in that 5 to 10 million unit range. And, so you're in that range with a whole new group of fans. Plus, you have all of the fans from the Budokai and Tenkaichi, era of the early 2000s. And so, yeah, I think, I've been saying for a while, and I don't know if this is going to end up, coming true, but we'll see. I've said, I think at the end of the day, at the end of this year, Sparking Zero could be one of the highest selling games of the year. Now, Is it going to be like top 2, top 3, top 4? Probably not. You think of the CODs of the world. You think of things like Elden Ring's DLC, right? So Elden Ring just in general is going to see a shot up. I don't think it's going to reach, that height. But if you told me at the end of the year that Sparking Zero were to get 3, 4, 5 million units, I'd absolutely believe you, right? I would imagine this is going to be one of those things where it's the fastest selling in the series. And when I say series, let's just say Dragon Ball, right? Like literally the series of Dragon Ball. I could see those tweets, right? It sells 1 million units in a day, and they say it's the fastest selling Dragon Ball game they've ever done. That's the kind of thing that I do think this game can do. Now, in order to be the biggest, it needs, again, that trickle down where it can slow, but it can't completely stop, right? And that honestly is going to be pretty interesting from a game like this because of the game, like we said earlier, right? The kind of game that it is. There will be reasons to keep playing. There will be reasons maybe to get it next year versus this year for those that want to do it, but maybe not to the extent that like live service, games that continuously evolve. This game will evolve a little, I guess, but not to that extreme, okay? So that, to me, is going to be the most interesting, where if it does 3, 4, 5 million right off the jump, does it completely stop? Like, does it max out at like 5, 6, 7 million? Or do you see it continue and it sells really well this year and it goes into next year and it continues to sell really well? I don't know. I think past patterns, and I also think this whole video is about the sales. Like, I want to talk about just how big the game is, but we've talked a lot about the quality as well. The game looks unbelievable, and I tend to exaggerate, but the game truly looks so good. And I don't know, it feels like you don't want to say like completely safe, right? A completely safe bet, but a somewhat safe bet. This game is probably going to be pretty good. And that's probably at the low end, right? Now, again, these are probablys, these are maybes, but I do think the game, my prediction right now is that the game is going to be an incredibly, incredibly good game. I really believe that. So, what ultimately helps sales the most, even beyond, continuing content, right? Content that will keep people coming back. What makes a game sell? Well, obviously, literally the game. And I think this game is going to have what it takes to just make a huge impact at launch. People hopefully will be talking about it in a positive way. Not that you have to, like the game will give you reason to talk about it positively, right? I really believe that. So, again, I've long been saying I would not be shocked if Dragon Ball, if you told me it was a top 5, top 7 highest selling game of 2024, I'd believe you. That's what I've thought that this whole year. That's what I think this game can do. But we'll see. 12 million's a lot. Getting 10 million, not every game does that. And it's going to take time. The Elden Rings of the world and the Hogwarts Legacies, they're rare. You only have maybe 2, 3, 4 games a year that can come out and do 10, 15 million that year. Like most times, if a game gets to 10, like Life is Strange reached 10 million, it reached 10 million like 8 years after. Now, it did really well at launch, and it kept going. It kept going slowly, I suppose, right? But it got to 10. 10 is a pretty rare achievement, and most times it takes a while. So for Dragon Ball specifically, you want to probably do half of that within the first year, or maybe even the first couple months, depending on how good it is, and then you see if it can kind of continue that momentum. But it's going to be a huge game. Like, regardless, if it gets to 10 or if it gets to 9.5 or 9, right? Regardless of the exact numbers, I think this game is going to be phenomenal. But I just wanted to throw this video out, see what you guys thought about the sales and, just how high this game can do. I believe it can get past Naruto. I truly believe it can get past 12 million. Wouldn't surprise me if this reached 13, 14, 15 and became the first Dragon Ball game, to get past, I guess, 10 million. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.